Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast, Rise and Tell with Sheekha. Thank you for spending your time with me today. Today, we have with us Regina Huber. As the CEO of Transform Your Performance, Regina drives bold, value-driven, and heart-centered leadership of self and others. Regina and I had a great conversation. I learned a lot as a leader, and I'm pretty sure that you are going to learn a lot too, especially if you are a new leader or have been a leader for quite some time. She is a transformational leadership freedom coach, inspirational speaker, best-selling author, and she's also the host of Rise to Lead podcast. In 2021 and 2022, she hosted her own TV show titled What's Your Spark? She created 3 signature coaching frameworks: powerful leadership transformation, new paradigm leadership, and get your dream salary. So there you go, everybody. Welcome to our show, Regina. We are so glad to have you on our show today.
I am delighted to be here with you, Sheekha.
Thank you. All right, we'll just get right into it, Regina. Why don't you tell us what made you who you are today?
Yeah, so currently I'm a transformational leadership and freedom coach because freedom is a big word for me in my life. It's omnipresent. It's always been. And I'm also an inspirational speaker through my company, Transform Your Performance, with the same website, transformyourperformance.com. I help leaders level up how they lead themselves and others so they can build thriving teams and thriving lives at the same time. So I love to talk about thriving leaders with thriving teams because one without the other is really not possible. Right. I have led a very eclectic life so far on several continents. A part of that life and those stories and adventures also went into my recent book, Living My Freaking Amazing Life, which I published last year. It's my second book. And yeah, as I said, my background is very eclectic: leadership roles at a global consulting firm on several continents, then also opening 2 of their offices in Portugal and Brazil, and later owning my own businesses in Argentina, in Brazil, and now in the US. And when I moved to New York City in 2012, I combined all that experience with my holistic studies to create Transform Your Performance. So like you, I also have moved to a different continent, actually repeatedly. I've moved a lot in my life so far. And so now I coach leaders, I run leadership trainings, I do keynotes, I speak at events online and offline. And, for me, what's really important in this work is that leadership isn't just about titles or money. It's really about fulfillment. It's about freedom and the well-being in all areas of life for everybody involved.
Perfect. Awesome. That is cool, Regina. I like how you've tied all your experiences to a business now and you're helping people grow. You've also co-authored 3 books. Is that correct?
Yeah, they are listed on my website on the books page. They were, smaller contributions, a chapter here and there. So you can look those up on my website on the books page. But I did write another book in 2016, which is called Speak Up, Stand Out and Shine. Completely different book. It is more about how to prepare for public speaking mentally, physically, and energetically so that you show up more confidently, feel better about it, and have more fun with it. And
that is interesting because I've seen a lot of people and I've met a lot of people who are actually afraid of public speaking because they feel they're not prepared enough or they're not used to looking at the camera, or when they're on a stage, they have the jitters. So what would you recommend to someone who wants to get into public speaking but is shy or scared?
Well, first of all, I grew up as the shyest kid in the village. So I can relate to shy, believe me. And I, of course, had to build my confidence over time because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to create or build new networks in the different locations I moved to. That wasn't always easy at first. And my confidence was actually completely destroyed at some point as a result of a very, very painful experience with a fraudulent business partner where then, we tend to doubt ourselves, our self-esteem crumbles and our confidence goes away. So I actually had to rebuild it. And that's also why I wrote this book. So I know that everybody can do it. You just need some tools at the beginning. I call those sometimes crutches. So as we are building our confidence over time, which comes through practice, which comes through mindset, which comes through connecting with your heart and with your message so that the message becomes more important in that moment and your audience becomes more important than your nervousness. Yes. So all of that is really important. But in the moment, sometimes we need some crutches or techniques and tools, right? And actually you can use those also, as when you've already built your confidence, because they're still valuable to enhance your presence as a speaker. Right. And some of those I put into my book, and we can do it energetically, connecting to our inner inherent and intrinsic power. We can do it mentally. We can do it through things that have to do with our body. Energy has to do with everything, right? Our thoughts are energy. Correct. We are consciousness and energy, right? But sometimes we make that artificial distinction, of course. And then, of course, through breathing, for example, when you focus on your body, there are so many ways. I also describe an NLP tool that I adapted for this purpose in my book. There's some very simple ones, very quick ones, and some that you just really need to practice a few times and then they become quick.
Oh, wow. Nice. Thank you for that, Regina. Okay, let's talk about leadership because I am very excited as a leader myself, especially now that everything is a hybrid workspace. I come from a company which is 100% remote and we have employees all over the world. So tell me, what's one of the biggest challenge that leaders face in today's generation?
I believe that it has to do with holding on to outdated leadership principles.
Oh, wow. Yes.
When we think that everything changes all around us and we even talk about change management and all these fancy things, but we're not willing to change our leadership paradigms, that's when we get stuck. Correct. We still call conversations that might not be our preferred ones, actually. We still call them difficult conversations. What does that do in our minds? It makes them difficult, for example, right? We still talk so much about problem solving instead of solution finding, which gives us a whole new perspective and gives the entire team a whole new perspective. And I even came up with an entire framework which is called New Paradigm Leadership that I also describe. You can find it on the frameworks page of my website, which has 4 simple elements, but they are so key. And, I think when leaders just don't open up to new ways of doing, that's where the challenge comes. And they're maybe not curious enough to ask their teams questions that could actually take them to a different place.
Correct. And what are those 4 pillars for the new paradigm leadership, Regina?
Yeah, and it's really easy to look this up on my website again. So we have, of course, mind, because the mindset is everywhere, right? And it's always important, but it's not the only thing. I also talk in my leadership about heart set, for example. So we, as a second element, we have the heart, we have message, and we have trust. So these are the 4 elements. And with message, I don't only mean verbal communication. I also include the energy you bring as a leader, the presence you bring, of course, also body language and all the other things that we talk about more commonly, right?
Yeah.
And then trust is really the glue that holds the team together. Without trust, nothing works. But oftentimes we think about trust building only in one direction, Sheekha.
Yes.
We don't really think that, okay, we also need to build our trust in our team.
Correct.
You know, it's not about just the team trusting us. It's about us trusting the team too, because otherwise, how would we delegate? So these are some elements that are included in this framework, and there's certainly more to it, but this is it in a nutshell.
I agree. I 100% agree. Regina, let's say we have a situation in the team where one member is not getting along with the other one. And it could be because of whatever reason, either cultural differences, or, it just doesn't work out with the two of them. And now that turns into a big conflict that a leader has to solve. What would you suggest to someone who is in that position as a leader, who is dealing with these two people? What would be two main steps that a leader can take to resolve conflict between coworkers who clearly do not like working with each other?
So again, we can address it from a different perspective, actually. Instead of resolving conflict, how can I improve, or how can I create a basis for team leaders to get along more smoothly? Right. So also making it clear that not everybody has to be close friends who works in my team, but how can we create an environment where everybody knows exactly what their role is and why they have their role and how everything fits together? Then I think that already becomes easier. So a lot of time it's a matter of communication and setting the stage for the team to work together, to collaborate, to co-create. And we can also promote this team spirit in our meetings by allowing the team to share, by inspiring and encouraging them to share more, by maybe every single team member sharing their stories. Yeah. Because when we get to know each other, then that usually increases our understanding of each other. So, for example, I did a speaking engagement once at a financial firm in New York City, and I had team members, or audience members rather in this case, come to the front and share their stories. They were volunteer sharings, right? So it was surprising that actually nobody had known one person's story. Nobody in the room had ever known where this person even was coming from, just also because she was usually shy about sharing her story. Right? And not everybody is outgoing. Not everybody is extroverted. So we need to take into account that different people bring different personalities. And we can also increase the understanding of different personalities within our team. There are so many ways we could also introduce, for example, personality tests of kinds. One way of doing that is using human design. You know, there are so many different ways depending on the size of the team and how much time you think you have for it. Yeah. That's, of course, always a factor. But I think, yes, when we get to know our team members better, that's what increases the understanding automatically.
Awesome.
Being curious as a leader. Asking questions so that team members are also actually inspired to ask those questions within the team.
Correct. I agree. And so tell me, Regina, you're talking a lot about energy and, being curious and body language and all that. I've gone through some of the things that are there on your website, on your profile. You've mentioned self-empowering mindset, how would you explain that mindset, and how can one get benefit from changing that mindset or gaining that mindset?
Yeah, so the two principles are, of course, connected, energy and mindset, as everything is really connected in leadership. It's what makes your leadership presence. It's what makes up who you are as a leader, right?
Correct.
But in order to be able to talk about it, we separate those elements out. So let's first talk about the mindset. The self-empowering mindset, to me, is about never going into victim mode or catching yourself when you do. And, it's about responsibility. It's about 100% responsibility, the ability to respond. It's about noticing that you are the creator of your reality. What does that mean? We say that so often, but do we really mean it?
Yeah.
It means no blaming. It means looking at other people's perspectives as maybe an interesting, different opinion, instead of rejecting, resisting, because that's not really what brings us together. That's not really what allows us to move toward a goal together. So it's important to also instill this in the team as a leader, not just by telling them, but by being it. Yeah. And that's also what I guide my clients to do through another framework this was actually my first framework, the powerful leadership transformation. This is who you are as a leader. And I'm not on purpose not saying who you become, because you are already that. You just want to get to that essence of you. That's your authentic leadership essence. And sometimes we need to chisel away instead of adding on. So the mindset is, of course, also about, addressing limitations. These are not only limiting beliefs or habits. They're also stuck emotions, undigested emotions. That's actually one of the biggest blockers for most of us. So we want to address them. We want to give them an opportunity to get dissolved and transmuted. And that's actually really, really powerful if someone is willing to go there, right?
Yeah.
Then the energy is, and there's certainly a lot more to self-empowering mindset. Okay. We cannot cover everything. Now the energy, what's interesting to me is that in business, we talk so little about energy because energy is what we are. So here's the thing though. When we know how to optimize our energy, that can give us an edge, especially as leaders. It can make all the difference. Why? Because do you know how long it takes for our brains to figure out whether we can trust someone? It's about 0.07 seconds.
Oh, wow.
It's part of our survival mechanism.
Okay.
And yes, we can correct this. We often hear people talk about the 7 seconds to make a first impression. If you have 7 seconds, that's quite a luxury already. But what happens? The fact is your energy always precedes you. It speaks faster than your words. It speaks louder than your words. So it already speaks before you say a single word. And when your energy contradicts your words, your energy usually wins. So it's really, really important to not just pay attention to the level of your energy, but to the quality of your energy.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it as that way. In my mind, when you were talking, you mentioned energy. I thought it's the way you talk to people, your tone, and what kind of image are you portraying. For example, even though we are virtual right now, you can clearly make out whether the other person is interested or not interested, whether they're paying attention or not. But yeah, this is a different perspective that you brought in here, Regina. So I'm happy that I got to learn something new today.
And actually, your energy flows into everything you just mentioned.
Right.
It flows into your words. It flows into your gestures. It flows into what we often call your presence. So,
correct.
Yes.
Wow. Interesting. But the 0.07 seconds, that was That fact I had no clue. Interesting. Okay.
If I may add that, why is it so fast? Because it's part of our survival mechanism. So
got it.
It has to be fast.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about burnout, Regina, because I feel in today's world, there are a lot of different factors that contribute to stress at workplace, even if it's virtual, even if you're not hanging out with your coworkers, or even if it's hybrid. A lot of different factors, a lot of different reasons, but leaders oftentimes they take the brunt of everything and they have everything on their shoulders because they are the ones who are representing their team. They're representing the work that their team is doing or lack of. So what would you suggest to these leaders who are feeling burnt out just because they're in the leadership positions?
First of all, you just hinted to it, Sheekha. It's transmitted to your team, right? When you're nervous, when you are stressed out, and when you're calm as well, right? So what do you want to transmit to your team? That's why self-care and self-leadership is so key. This has also to do, of course, with emotional intelligence and all these different elements that flow into leadership. It's so important for you to have those healthy habits as a leader so that you can bring again this energy, to your team so that you're not transmitting the stress energy, which then stresses everybody on the team out. And it's completely counterproductive to the desired result. It slows the team down rather than actually speeding it up, which is what we often want, or it also badly impacts engagement, because when I have to, or when I feel like I'm so stressed out that I have to focus on my stress rather than on the work at hand, then that slows me down, right?
Agreed.
And so that's one very important aspect. The second one is, of course, delegate. Learn how to delegate.
True.
And delegate with growth in mind so that it actually works for everybody involved. What does that require? First of all, it requires to get to know your team really well so that you know what everybody's strengths are, and maybe uncover some hidden talents, untapped potential that you have never even thought of because it wasn't in the job description. Right? So really get to know your team before delegating, and don't just shove all the tasks that you don't want to do onto your team. Yes, as a leader, you should be able to have the time to focus on strategy, to focus on leadership and everything that comes with that. So no, you should not be doing administrative tasks. However, what also is important is that you give your team tasks that make them feel valued too. Right. So it's not just about redistributing tasks. And maybe there's somebody else, a new team member that you need to hire to pass tasks that your team members have outgrown. So I think that's really, really important, to delegate with growth in mind, and that's where the trusting your team comes in, Sheekha, that I mentioned before.
Correct.
You expect, as a leader, you expect your team to trust you, but do you trust your team? It's a two-way street.
Exactly. And I get that. I was there once, and now that I'm on the other side, I clearly see that yes, delegating work is easy, but then you also need to trust them and not micromanage them, and make sure that they are confident too, that they can take that task, finish it with confidence, and then come back and tell you, here, you asked me to do this, I'm done, and I've proved to you that I can take on more stuff, or that I'm ready for the next level. And I've seen people's face just light up the minute they either get the task, or the minute that we tell them, we trust you, that you're going to get this done and that you're capable of doing it. That, like you said, it's a two-way lane, and that trust is so important. And again, it comes only when you're having those one-on-one discussions with them, and you're sitting down knowing the person, who they are, outside of work, or what their likes, dislikes are. Even a simple question about their pets or their children, if they mention very casually that their child was sick or something was wrong about their pet, next day, if you just take out 1 second of your busy schedule just to send them a message to ask them, hey, is it okay? Is your child okay? Is your family doing okay? Are you okay? You mentioned the hospital visit or whatever. That counts so much. That's like the initial stage of another conversation, and that you taking step to building that trust with your coworkers and your peers. And I completely agree with that. That is so important. Regina, you also mentioned about emotional intelligence. Um, I have noticed that not everybody on the team is same. And like you mentioned, not everyone is extroverted, not everyone is outgoing. Everyone's emotional state is also very different. Some people work after hours, or they log in early to escape their kids or their chores or their family or whatever's going on in their personal lives. Some, on the other hand, are completely opposite. So when you collectively address the team as a group, as a leader, what should be something that we need to keep in mind when we are trying to enforce something to 10 people of different emotional intelligence levels, and then different levels of reacting to a certain news or a certain task?
Yeah, again, you mentioned quite a few elements just now before asking these questions that have to do with making the workplace more humane, right? Humanizing the workplace, as I sometimes call it. And it has to do with this as well, right? So recognizing, acknowledging the team members and their emotional states, their potential conversational blind spots, because those often come from emotions such as fear,
Correct.
a lack of trust, right? And, I believe that vulnerability could be such a superpower to leaders if they just really let themselves be vulnerable. And that doesn't mean being emotionally exposed. That's not the same thing, right? But modeling vulnerability means that I can admit mistakes, or I don't even know anymore if I want to call them mistakes. We all make decisions. So I can admit, okay, that decision needs to be reversed. That's what it is to me, right? Or it needs to be changed, or we need to change directions, or, oh, maybe, I should have listened to this. So the should haves I don't really love, but, but just as a leader to admit that, or to show that you are not supposed to appear perfect and infallible, sorry. And that also, opens up the possibility for the team members to admit when they require support, when they need help, even also in the context of delegating. That also needs to be transmitted, that trust that they can come to you. You don't want to micromanage them, as you said, but you do want to have that door open for when they do need support or when they have questions, right? And when you bring that more human aspect of leadership into your team, I personally believe that the overall emotional intelligence will go up almost a little bit automatically. Nice. That is also why I'm such a huge fan of heart-centered leadership, because a lot of people think, oh, leading from the heart is soft or weak. It's actually the opposite. It's bold. It's courageous. It's new. That's why it is courageous, because not everybody does it. So you get to step up as a leader and say, look, you know what, as we make this decision, we might not always be able to do this. But for example, if it's not like a huge team, in a huge corporation, maybe as we make this decision, let's consider everyone involved and how it affects them. Maybe that is going to be a much more sustainable decision. The outcome of that is a much more sustainable decision than any quick decision that does not consider this, right? It's just an example, Sheekha. I believe that, self-awareness is the basis for self-leadership, right? So that includes emotional intelligence. And I talked about also actually dissolving your stuck emotions. When you do that as a leader, you're in a much different place to model this to your team. They will notice it, and you will be able to pass your emotional intelligence, or a piece of it at least, on to them by who you are, by how you show up, and by maybe also teaching them proactively, right? And being that inspirational leader that they want to see in you, and not just managing projects.
Correct.
And, I know leadership is more than managing projects anyway, right? But I'm just exaggerating a little bit here. So maybe you can become that very inspirational figure in your team's lives who has something else to give them.
Correct. Agreed. 100%. Great thoughts, Regina. And I think I've learned a lot today that I can actually go back and implement at my workplace. Amazing. Before we end the show, Regina, what would be your top 2 suggestion or tips that you would want to give to someone who's wanting to become a leader, or someone who's going to get a promotion, or who's new to this leadership space?
So I was very unexpectedly, surprisingly promoted into a leadership role at the age of 27. Nice. Just after I had moved to a new location, in this case, the Spanish office of this consulting firm I was working for at the time. I had just learned the language a year earlier it started, and I had zero leadership background, zero studies. So of course, you have an advantage if you have some background, but you don't always get that before you're promoted into a leadership position. Somebody saw that potential in me. So when somebody does see that potential in you, trust that you can do it. And even when they don't, trust it too, because what is really, really important is your intention.
Yes.
Who do you want to be as a leader? So get clarity on what you want to transmit, your intention. You don't need to have all those leadership skill courses under your belt. Yes, it's important to be able to communicate effectively. Yes, there are some, basic skills that you might actually already have developed. So just really take stock of everything you already have, and don't look so much at what you do not have. You don't need to check all the boxes. If you did, you would already be there in that role, and it would already be boring. So be open to growing, right?
Yes. Yeah. Agreed. Thank you, Regina. This was awesome. I don't know about others, but I've learned a lot today. And thank you so much for these valuable suggestions. I had a lot of fun. And again, I thank you for taking out time from your schedule and for agreeing to be a guest on our show. I loved it. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for asking great questions and for allowing me to have this wonderful conversation with you.
Of course. Thanks, Regina. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. You know what you have to do. Share this episode with the leaders in your community, with any of the friends who are stepping into leadership positions, or any of your relatives. I hope this has been helpful for you, as it has been for me. Thank you for being on this journey with me and for spending your crucial time listening to this episode. As always, keep growing, keep glowing, and be yourself. This is your host, Sheekha Singh, signing off. Bye.